we will be, going through this entire course, right? And how we gonna excel ourselves in DevSecOps, right? So about this course, right? This course consists of various sections where we will, teach you, or we will explain, why 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 cloud computing and why Azure, right? And in the introduction, we will also explain, why we have chose Azure Cloud, what is the, market value, and how, we can excel or add to DevSecOps in Azure Cloud. We will also, look into doing automation. So DevSecOps is basically automation in security, right? Maybe that, right? Moving forward, right? So the basics of all the, automation that we do, all the application that runs, right, happens in a Linux machine, right? So knowledge of Linux is mandatory. I mean, if you currently don't know Linux, that's okay, because we will be teaching you about, the Linux operating system, that the types of, or, I would say, distribution of Linux that are available. I will also talk to you about in detail about the Linux architecture, right? How Linux operating system is laid out, right? Where you can see the logs, where you can, manage your kernel, or whatnot, right? We will also, do a hands-on with Linux commands, like, let's say, different commands of Linux, right? Where you need to do hands-on with the commands that I will be sharing. Like, let's say, if your team says, "Hey, can you please take this log and zip it and share it on an email," right? Uh, Linux does not have a UI; it's a black screen, right? How you gonna do it? Right? There is an automation way you can do it, or you can do it manually, right? If you have to do it manually, you have to use certain Linux commands. Another aspect that, we will be looking into is networking and disk management. So why this is important is because networking, where you will understand, what is IP, what is IPv6, what is, public IP, private IPs. You will also understand about TCP, UDP, different kind of ports that are available and that are used in day-to-day activity in cloud. Okay, disk management is important, because disk management is also important because you will be looking into, you know the disk usage in your cloud, how you will attach, detach disk, right? All those things uh, happens through Linux command. And once you're familiar with this section, right, understanding Linux, type operating system, and other aspects, we will look into working with automation using shell scripting. So shell scripting, right, basically is a set of, command, or you can say a way of doing automation in a Linux machine, right? Where you can, do things automatically. Uh, for example, um, let's say there are big servers in cloud, right? And to run those, servers, there is a cost associated with it. Now, let's say on weekends, you want to shut those machines, right? You don't want to run because nobody's using those machines on weekend, right? So what you do is, you write an automation saying that, hey, from Friday, maybe, 9 p.m., shut the machine down, and on Monday, at 6 a.m., turn on the machine, right? So those kind of automation is possible using shell scripting. So shell scripting also, works on the same concept like other programming language. So it has, variables, conditions, and loops, and other functions that, we will be looking into. Okay. So this is all about, Linux and automation in Linux. Now, once you are familiar with all these, Linux and shell scripting, right? What we will do is we will look into services that are being used in Azure, right? There are different types of services. There are different, things that you need to know in Azure, like, what is a subscription? What is a tenant, right? What is users? What are groups? So there are different aspects that you need to understand in Azure. And then we will do hands-on, right? Like how you're gonna create users, how you're gonna create groups, right? What is a resource manager? How will you, create a virtual machine? So when you do all these things, right, you get a hang of cloud. And this is going to be, a completely hands-on, right? And then when you work with creating virtual machine, you also understand, the type of disk that you need to look into, what kind of network that you will be, attaching to that machine. So all these things will be taught during the uh, hands-on session. We will also be looking into we'll also be looking into, in detail about networking, wherein, we will try to understand the Azure VNet virtual network, where, we will see what kind of subnets we can configure, what is a public IP address, what is, a load balancer, or, other security concepts that are available for networking in Azure. Then what we do is we go to understanding other resources that are available in Azure, where we will look into application gateway, right? What is application gateway, how it works, and we will also look into different types of storage that are available. And once we are familiar with this, this is the very important topic that a DevSecOps engineer has to know. Okay, from data protection till image scanning and mounting and networking. So this is where we will do a lot of hands-on, right? So we will teach you how to, create a Docker image. We will teach you how to, work with containers. We will also teach you how to make sure those containers are safe and secure, right? What we will do is we will use different tools like open source tools like Trivy, Gripe, to scan these images, right? To make sure these images are vulnerability free. We will also help you understand how to write secure Docker files, right? So these are the things that a DevSecOps engineer have to know, uh, because in day-to-day life, right, in your DevSecOps journey, every day you will deal with vulnerabilities. Every day you will deal with, CVEs, I would say. So CVEs are nothing but common known vulnerabilities. Okay. Vulnerabilities meaning weaknesses in your, let's say, code, or in your, the application that you are developing, right? When you develop certain applications, you use different types of, libraries and binaries from different places, right? Like for example, let's say if you're building a Python application, right? You will use different Python binaries and libraries, right? You'll take it from internet and then you will use it. So let's say if those binaries and libraries are not secure, right? How will you make sure you will secure them, right? So DevSecOps is basically, this is what you do, right? You look into those codes, you do a static analysis, you do a dynamic analysis, right? And you make sure that your container or the image that you are sending to production is safe and secure. Once you have done, or once you have understood what container is, how to secure container, how to make sure the microservices that you are building is safe and secure, what you do is you push those images to registry, right? Here. So Azure Container Registry is what we will be learning. how to push an image to Azure Container Registry, how to make sure that all the images that are being pushed, right, are being utilized, and how to manage Azure Container Registry. So understanding Azure Container Registry is an important concept. So there are different kind of registries available in the market. Okay, let me break it down for you. Um, there is there are tools called JFrog, right? JFrog. There are tools. So this is also a registry where you can, push your artifacts here. You can push your container images. But this is a third-party tool, right? It is outside of Azure Cloud. Now here in this course, we are learning Azure, so we will be using Azure Container Registry. Now, please remember that if you know one of the container registries, right, it is easy for you to understand other container registries because all the core concept remains the same. So in interview, right, if interviewer asks, right, hey, do you know JFrog, or do you know Docker Hub, right? Just say yes, because 90% of the concept is same. Okay. Sorry, I also, I will also teach you how to, manage all this. So not to worry. I missed these two part. So earlier, so this two part, right, where you will be scanning. So going back to the containers, right? Container, when you build a container, right, you can do a tree scan. So what is tree? Right? Tree is an open source tool to scan for common weaknesses in your software, right? Wherein, like, let's say, Privy helps you identify that, hey, this is a known vulnerability or this is a known weakness. Please fix it, right? So when you run Privy scans, it will tell you how to. It will also tell you how to fix it, right? So let's say for this CV, right? For this CV, this is one of the CVs, right? I will also teach you how to read a CV, okay? Like, let's say it's a CV 2024, right? And 10963. This means that this CV was found in 2024, and this is the unique identification number for this CVE. So if you see, right, there is some vulnerabilities, and the current status of the vulnerability is fixed. Now, how do you fix it, right? When you run a trivia scan, right? Let me show you. This is how the trivia scan screenshot, it will look like. Mm,
So this Trivi scan also is something like Nessus or some vulnerability management tools, right?
It's not a vulnerability management tool, it's a scanner.
It's a scanner, okay.
Yeah, it's not a management tool, it's a scanner. So what Trivi does is, right, Trivi at the back end, Trivi have their own database, right? So the common known vulnerability database. So what they do is they try to match it, right? So what you're using, what is the current version of the binaries and libraries you're using, right? And they try to match it with their database and say, hey, this is a downgraded version or a lower version of, you see here, right? Here.
Yes.
So if you see here, right, it is using Apache Tomcat, right? And the installed version means the version that is currently being used is this. And if you and right beside this, right, installed version, it will also say fixed version, right? In maybe upgrading to 9.1.0 will fix this CV. So we will talk about that in detail as well. Now, once you are familiar with 3D scanning, we will also as a DevSecOps engineer, you have to know all these two things. Okay, tree scanning plus Kubebench. So we will be using Kubebench to scan your Docker for the CIS compliance, right? So CIS is nothing but a set of rules or set of standards that everyone follows to make sure the containers or the Docker images that we have, right, is safe and secure. So there is a tool called Kubebench that we will be using to run a CIS benchmarking. So Kubebench is also a tool. So Kubebench, Trivi, right? These are the open source tool developed by a company called Aqua. Okay. So if you see Kubebench, right? Kubebench have a set of rules. CS benchmarking. So if you see, so there are set of rules, right? You can do a CIS benchmarking on Kubernetes. You can do a CIS benchmarking on Azure Kubernetes, right? This is what we're gonna learn in this course as well, and find out what is happening in your infrastructure. So it is set of rules. For example, so one CIS rule that I can think of is running your container or your Docker images, right, in a root privilege. Now, as if you are, looking to secure your infrastructure, which is your Kubernetes or which your application, right? You should not run your container in a root mode. Why? Because let's say if some hacker gets into your application and it gets into your machine, right? In let's say if you okay, let me put it this way. You have deployed an application using a Docker container, and that application is exposed to the world. Now somehow a hacker gets access to your application. Then what he can do is he can get into your Docker image and try installing some malicious code or try injecting some malicious code, right? In that kind of scenario, he will be needing root privileges, right? So it is not recommended for us, or as a DevSecOps engineer, you should always say, hey, you should not run your containers in a root privilege or root mode, because if it gets compromised, malicious code can be injected. A lot of things can happen, right? So to prevent that, we do this. I'm just trying to find my CIS thing. So we will also, do there are tools with this can be done using Kubebench, right? So I will teach you how we work with Kubebench and how we get this sorted. We will teach you how to scan your containers, right, for CIS compliance. Moving on, right? Moving on, we will learn about AKS, which is very important topic for a DevOps engineer or even a DevSecOps engineer. Now, what is AKS? Azure Kubernetes Services, right? And I will explain how Kubernetes works, what are different components in Kubernetes, like replica set, daemon set, and other components, how to work with it. Once we have deployed Kubernetes cluster, once you're familiar with basic concepts like stateful set, deployment, replica set, and these things, right? I will jump into the monitoring part of the Kubernetes, right? As a security engineer, what is important is you should know how to monitor your deployment or monitor your infrastructure. So we will work with Prometheus and Grafana. These are open source tools where we will know how to deploy these tools and monitor your infrastructure. Okay. Infrastructure deployed inside Kubernetes. Okay. Not your infrastructure as in your cloud infrastructure. Again, we as a DevSecOps engineer, these are the topics. These are the, 4 or 5 topics you should be by heart. Okay. Like, let's say if someone talks about Kubernetes security, you should say that, hey, I know Kubernetes security. I know how to, do a CIS benchmarking, or I know how to, make sure that I know how to deploy a safe image into Kubernetes cluster. I know how to, you know, manage RBAC roles, and I know how to do, other things, secret management and other things, right? So all these things will be covered in this AKS end-to-end section. And we will also, once this is done, right, we will look into some automation, some as in we will look into Azure pipeline where, so if you see here, we have automation, right? We have automation. So automation where, let's be hands-on with Ansible. We learn Ansible, what Ansible is, and how to work with Ansible. Right? It is a configuration management tool to configure your deployments, to configure your virtual machines and other things in cloud. The other thing that we will also learn is infrastructure as code, which is a Terraform, right? Terraform is widely used to make sure that, so Terraform is a infrastructure as code tool. Now, why DevSecOps engineers, they promote Terraform, Ansible, is to make sure the infrastructure everyone that is deploying is safe, and everyone is following a set of standards while deploying a resource in cloud. Now, let's say, for example, okay, so let's say earlier, right, when I talked about deploying virtual machines, right? Let's say I have hundreds of engineers in my company, right? And I go ahead and, tell them, hey, deploy machine, do whatever you feel like. I have given you Azure subscription, do whatever you feel like. Right now, as a developer or as an engineer, right, I would not know, what are the security best practices to deploy this machine, right? I will just go and randomly select whatever I want to, whatever VM or whatever, machine or operating system I want to, and then I can just simply click on next, 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 and then create the machine. And that is not following any security standards. Like, for example, the name of the machine, right? I can give anything like that. I can give anything, any name, right? There is no standard that I am following. Like, let's say I am giving this, right? Somebody else can give, PPP, right? So in order to, set standard, or in order to set a, regular process, right? What we do is we use Terraform, right? Terraform is a infrastructure as tool, right? Terraform is a infrastructure as, sorry, not tool, I'm saying infrastructure as code. So what you do is you write code, Terraform codes, to deploy machines in cloud. Okay. And you need to know a little bit of Ansible and at least 50% of Terraform to be our DevSecOps engineer, because all the resources that will be deployed to cloud is through automation. And to do that automation, right, you have to know Terraform and cloud and Terraform and Ansible. Okay, moving on to DevOps, right? You see here, okay, working principle of DevOps, and these are the things that I was talking about just now, right? CI/CD pipeline, built-in functionality, Azure pipeline, how to write YAML files. So all these things will be taught. So not to worry. Once you have learned all this, DevOps pipeline, writing pipeline, creating pipeline, connecting it with repo and other things, then we will move into automating security and compliance, where you will understand SAST and dash scanning. You will understand what is compliance scanning. You will also understand dependency scanning, right? And fixing them. Right? So those things will be covered in the section post you have completed the DevOps hands-on, and what, once we have completed DevOps hands-on and the explanation, the theory part of DevOps. Okay. Post all this, what we will do is we will be doing two projects. Okay. Two projects which will be end-to-end DevSecOps project, where I will do one of the projects in the live class, and another project, right? I would encourage you all to do it by yourself. If you get stuck, I will help you. Else, we are good. And then in the maybe in the later or during the end of the training, we will also teach you, or we'll also prep you for the interview questions that are asked generally. So for me, like, I I sit for interview, right? I take a lot of interview for DevOps, security, DevSecOps, right? I know what kind of questions is being asked, and as a panelist, right? What kind of answers we expect, right? So we'll prep you for the prep, as in I will just give you. I'm not prep as in I will give you question answers, right? I will tell you tricks and tips on how to crack DevSecOps interview.